Hello, everybody. Thanks for your attendance. Today, I'm going to introduce a novel theoretical model for atoms inspired by communication theory. First, let me give a little bit background of computational methods has been used in modeling atoms, the basic building block for most of the chemicals and materials that we're interested to study in the scientific field. And then I will introduce a little background from the mathematics and the physics theories that being used for different precision and of scales of how we model atoms and its systems of collection and their difference in precision and computational cost. And in the end, I would introduce the theoretic framework of the completely novel theoretic physics model that we used and inspired by communication theory, and we call this communication dynamics. So first, let me introduce some history background of biomolecular modeling methods has been used in this field for the past probably 30 years. The major mainstream methods from a high precision to a low precision or time independent and time dependent order, it would crystallize the quantum mechanics, classical mechanics, and then molecular dynamics. So first, the quantum mechanics, the QM model has been invented for over 100 years. And since then, it has been used to describe the very fine limit of the physical reality up to as small as electrons and those particles and their behaviors in the atoms or molecular system. And then the QM model is famous by the expression of a Schrodinger's equation, which is a function of particles described using a wave function. And then to solving this Schrodinger equation has been quite difficult in the previous methods. And then people has been applying approximated methods to solve the Schrodinger equation. And currently, a variety of methods come out, and the computational complexity of such methods is up to n over 4 to 7 magnitude, and n is the number of electrons that in the system. Another common way, which is less computational costly methods, is molecular mechanics. And as you can see, the MM models leverage different potential energy functions, however, borrowed from classical mechanics that we use to describe a larger object by the Newton back then. And however, those type of mechanic formulation can somehow approximate the behaviors between atoms in a molecular system. And people have been using these methods to describe a larger, complicated system that the QM model cannot describe, which would have a dramatically reduced computational cost. But n, big O is n of 2 or 3, and n is the number of atoms. And at the same time, people also be able to introduce another dimension of time to really describe the dynamic behavior of those atoms in a molecular system to mimic such as a biological process. And those methods are already well defined and extensively used in the field. However, they have different type of drawbacks. And then also in 2013, there's 3 great scientists in this field has been awarded Nobel Prize in chemistry, which is for the development of multi-scale models for complex chemical systems. In short, is to leveraging all those methods I mentioned in the previous slides and apply to a complex chemical systems such as a biological system, which means those methods are already well recognized and pretty pretty useful in the field. However, there's several challenges. First of all, the theoretic accuracy in describe the physical realities using this model is very limited. So when we use the QM, we can see it's highly accurate in terms of describing the behavior of electrons and calculate electronic structures of a molecule. Those results are really highly correlated to the experiment measurement. However, when we go to molecular mechanics or higher approximation molecular dynamics, it's getting lower resolution and also far from the physical reality in terms of experimental correlation. Another thing is multi-scale integration. So all those methods come from totally different physics theories, which means mathematically they are completely different. And then, however, in the previous MM and MD scenario, people are being integrate those different theoretic series using a linear function with different weights. This is kind of a very rough approximation, and which means all your parameters need to be adjusted from case to case, which is really not a good way for a high efficient integration. So it's and the third one is the computation complexity and scalability. Like I said, for the QM model, it's very accurate, but it's very complex. And then currently we can only scale the system up to like about 100 atoms. And we can't really use it to calculate biologic molecules such as DNA and proteins. So it really cannot scale up to a larger micro physical objects. And then the fourth one is big data analytics on those molecular structure database are also computational expensive if we would leverage QM or MM to calculate all the informations within those database. So, so for example, if we would like to calculate a protein dissolving water, which is about 1 million atoms, we would parallelly run a computation on the supercomputer using about 500 to 1,000 CPUs for about a month to be able to mimic about 1 microsecond of behavior of its physiologic states. So in that case, if we would simulate since human have about 20,000 genomes with respect to approximately 800,000 proteins. And if we would to calculate them using any of those methods, it won't be realistic based on the current computational capability of human technology in general. So we really need a better mathematic or more AB initial like method to really be able to simulate a true multi-scale integration problem. So here's the thing. So for all the conventional model, they always use 3D space plus time type of description, separate different scales of precision. For example, when we calculate electrons, we use 3D probability distribution function plus a time. And when we simulate like objects in classic mechanics scenario, we redefine the precision from an electron to like a object of some kind of mass. And then we do the same 3D description of it. And then to calculate the time-dependent behavior or time-dependent behavior. And those are very restricted because every time when the scale increases, we have to redefine the minimum computing parameter or objects which differ from scale to scale. So when we do like a cosmology study, we have to define the entire planet as a point using a completely different mathematical equation. But still, it's like a 3D space plus time type of model. So this type of conventional scientific modeling is highly restricted because it's rejected by human mind, because human can only comprehend 3D space plus time. Any dimensions more than 3D or in a 1D space or beyond smaller scale of dimensions, human mind won't be able to really comprehend. However, mathematically, 3D space plus time model might not be the most efficient way to really compute and describe the complex world that we live in. In this case, we introduce a novel way, which we use a vector of space-time plus frequency. So in that case, it can be uniformed on different precision as an adjustable model. And I will introduce some detail of this. So first of all, let's see how we integrate different scale and what scale means. So in the physical reality, we have subject matters as small as like is a short wave of like electromagnet spectrons. And those waves are by their wavelengths are in a different energy spectrum and also mass spectrum. And then as long as the mass goes up, and then we comes with electrons, atoms, molecules, and other bigger substance in life. So, and then different type of like scale of the size, it's really as you can see that it's the really different from using the current knowledge. And between each scale, we will have a different model, which is not very efficient. But the communication dynamics we invented could potentially find the common features of all the different scales and then calculate them using the same mathematical formula. And then more specifically, when we're talking about at the atomic or molecular or physiological type of modeling, we have already derived a different type of methods at different scales. And from low precision to high precision, and also different type of computational costs, it has been already way established as those building blocks. But here we would like to introduce a new model really to unify them and to make you be able to simulate, for example, an organ that used to be simulated using finite elements theories by using the same method, and at the same time be able to mimic the atomic or even subatomic resolution of behavior of different molecular scales. So, and first, let's get a little bit background of communication theory, which has been invented in the 1950s by Claude Shannon. So the theory is relatively easy to comprehend because we use it almost every day. So which means the information comes in, we receive it, and there's a transmitter to carry this information through we call it a communication channel. And any communication channel would carry noise. And then when the receiver receives it, the information gets out, and the information coming and out are not always 100% accurate or the same. And there's a bunch of room for miscommunication, which we call it noise. And so there's another representation for to describe this process is like, ideally, if we would like to perfectly transmit the letter from A to lowercase to capital A, it would look like this. However, by some chances, we would miscommunicate, and then to mistranslate them convert them in different wrong codes. In that case, the channel contains some kind of noise and error, and it can be reproduced like that. And this is a reality. So basically, any input and output through any type of media, like a communication channel, would carry some noise. And that's kind of the part of all communication system or nature in general. And then using a mathematic Fourier series representation, we can describe this error content graph as I showed earlier with different objects. So A is a jump step or a jump speed, in this case for the graph, and N is the number of vertices in the graph, and L is determine the interval between those Fourier series has been calculated, and P is the resolution parameters. I will go into more details for that. And as we're using the communication theory, we would like to basically have this assumption that any object, no matter small or big, we can describe using an error content graph, and which means it's self-defined as a communication channel. And then when they interact together, we put them in a complex matrix with independent channels all overlaid in it, which is a compounded communication channel, which we call it a U matrix. And then here comes with the theoretic part of it. So we, based on the previous theories from the error content graph, and then to the Fourier series of representation of error content graph, and also the matrix form of that, the Fourier series, that we constructed the mathematical foundation of communication dynamics. And here we would like to introduce the theoretic foundation of communication dynamics. So first of all, there will have four assumptions based on this theory. First is the universe is anisotropic. So which means it's not symmetric or in a weight of time or in a weight of space. The second assumption is the first assumption admits the second law of thermodynamics, which means it's the error of time. So which means time goes, the first two actually says the same thing, that the universe evolved in a single direction rather than a symmetric direction. So the time is a description of evolutionary stage of the universe, as a measure of entropy. So, and as time goes by, entropy increases. That's the fundamental second law of thermodynamics. And this is very important because in communication theory, the formula of information entropy is exactly the same as the entropy described in thermodynamics, which means a computer itself, or when the information flows using a computer to compute, it follows the same rules as the object that's being simulated using the computer. So which means there is the bridge between the information world and the physical world is actually the entropy theory. The third assumption is movement from a low entropy state to a high entropy state is experienced as an acceleration. So which means we redefine acceleration, not the same acceleration as the Newtonian law, is basically the increase of entropy process. So, and this observation states of acceleration admits the general theory of relativity, specifically as the universe accelerates, the speed of time can be different in different microsystems, which means in different part of the universe, time are different. How we measure time cannot be the same. So, and the fourth one is the substance of the universe can be represented as a one-dimensional communication network, which means all observations, including emergent dimensionalities, can be described as a manifestation of one-dimensional space-time. So this one is a bit abstract, but we will get there later in our mathematical description of it. So here, then we have to redefine several terms that we just proposed earlier, as I mentioned. First, what is a computing? So computing is a universal form of existence for all nature and artificial system at every scale of precision, which means any interaction we can consider as a computing process. And also, no matter is inter-objective or internal inside an object. The second one is space-time. So we use a complex number to separate 3D space and time as a space-time point. In that case, we could, using this kind of special representation of the reality to do more higher dimension complexity of computation. And then within complex number domain is a good way to inherent the time inside a complex of space of time continuum. So the third one is the T vector and U matrix. So in communication dynamics, we define a new mathematical object called the time vector. So the time vector is the extension of regular vector definition with the addition of a frequency parameter. And the T vector is represented by 3 parameters: magnitude, direction, and frequency. And the frequency component of the T vector can be represented by the Fourier series. So that's what we call the T vectors or the U matrix, like I introduced earlier in the formula. And the first one is we call the communication channel. So a channel is a computation system U. So it could be at different scale of precision again. It performs computing upon receiving signals from an environment and transmit in space-time in the form of acceleration, which means a process of entropy increase and a process with error, and then give signals back to the environment. And then it is also a non-stationary. It's constantly accelerates and evolving. So in communication dynamics, all observed interactions at every scale of precision are assumed to obey the rule of communication dynamics. So which means we apply this general assumption that the communication dynamics can be applied in different scale and different subject matters, as long as we have a precise and a proper definition of communication channel for that system. And the first application we use this is to leverage the U matrix formulas to completely recompute the quantum mechanics scale of object and replace certain like symbols, or we call the quantum parameters used in very in the quantum mechanic field. So first of all, this is how we define the electron shells around an atom using quantum mechanics, or we call the original theories of quantum chemistry that being applied in the field. So first is the principal quantum number, which refers to which shell it belongs to of this electron outside of the atom. And then the second one is the angular momentum, which would also describe how the electron spans at different energy states. And then there's a magnetic quantum number, which is to describe the direction of the electron when it spans. And then we have atomic number, which is the number in the periodic table to represent different elements. and it reflects its nucleus mass. And then we have the periodic number, which means the row number on the periodic table represents a different type of elements with different maximum shell number of electrons. And here is the modified U matrix formulas using various of quantum numbers defined in quantum mechanics. And applying that, we'll be able to calculate the communication channel of each electron shells. For example, this is like the s orbital of Orb and all other force row elements. And then, as you can see, this is like a dynamic graph that we plotted using Mathematica, but basically they are not static. They're basically constantly vibrates in this pattern. But this is a bit abstract. So then we take the absolute number of the shell, the outer shell, the valence shell electron, and then get their expected value of the radius, which means the most outer shell radius would reflect the size of this atom. And here we get the using the QM calculated orbital radius, and this is the U matrix calculation. And both calculations agree pretty well by leveraging this this theory. So, and the computational cost is quite different. So the QM again is big O and N over 4 to 7 of magnitude. But the U matrix calculation is almost linear. So, and we use totally different costs and reach a similar conclusion. And here we also get the measured atomic radius from physics 6. This is actually in all our physics textbook. And those measurements are not completely accurate because to measure atomic radius is extremely difficult using the current technology of like quantum scale measurement. And then this is our U matrix calculated atomic radius, which has exactly the same trend and with very so it's very correlated scale. So this is we're a bit surprised about the result as well. And we believe this type of mathematic formulas can really describe a larger system, because if it can be applied to the fundamental electron behavior of atoms, and then we can also scale it up to molecule and all the others because the computational cost is so low. And then, so first we do, so this is like a compounded communication channels, which means if we were to put like multiple atoms in the system and how it looks like, so that it would form a complex molecular structure. However, it can also be represented using the same U matrix. And when you scale up, you can see that we kind of conceptually modeled different biomolecules such as the DNA, protein fragments, and also a whole protein assembly and a whole virus. And then we can also find the internal patterns of how they assembled using the same U matrix with different parameters. And that's kind of like interesting phenomena of the nature that no matter how small the system is or how big there is a repeating pattern at every single scale. It's like a spiral effect, so that you could say, so that the communication dynamics theory is like a spiral that you can really describe every scale by precision using the same mathematical formula. So first is like communication theory, we get the conclusion that is a uniformly applicable formula, and to be able to express different scale of systems with pretty low computational cost and high accuracy. And then the U matrix contain dynamic information to replace conventional space-time model, so that you have to separately calculate the terms of space and time and integrate them over time in molecular modeling. So this is more dynamic, non-stationary inherited. And the multi-scale integration is actually achieved by the compounded communication channel with near linear computation complexity. Thank you. This is the end of this talk. Most of this work has been done over the past 5 years on the spell time of the scientists in the center, because all of us have our primary responsibilities in different fields. But we all found this theory is very intriguing and could lead away to a completely different perspective of how we modeling the reality using different computation systems, and also would open new views and would open new doors for us to study science as well. So if any students and independent researcher are ever interested in exploring more and help us perfect the theory and its mathematics and its eventually application domain, are more than welcome to join us. Thank you.